Please bow your heads in a moment of silence. Alright, I'm going to tell you a story so dark that it pains me to bring it to you today. I'm going to tell you a story about a content creator who was having a great time in this community. He went about a year controversy free. Enter Neil collects 10 questions. I decided I would answer these questions, and I made it to round 4 unscathed. And I got all the way to my biggest pet peeve. And I decided to be brutally honest with my biggest pet peeve in this comic book community. Because I decided I was going to add a little bit of humor to my 10 questions. I wasn't going to be so serious. Well, shame on me. Because a content creator out there named David's Comics and Wrestling has taken my biggest pet peeve and has run with it. He's been going all over live chats. He's been telling people that Lobo is the real romantic comedy and not Deadpool. He's been telling people that Lobo is definitely DC's Deadpool. And he knows that gets on my nerves. I can't stand it when people say Lobo is DC's Deadpool. Lobo was created in 1983. Deadpool was created in 1991. Let's get things straight. The reincarnation of Lobo after Crisis on Infinite Earths happened in 1986. Still years before Deadpool was even created. And you, David's Comics and Wrestling, have been disrespecting the main man. So here it is. I present to you David's Comics and Wrestling and the rest of the people in the community watching the greatest story ever told. Cut my music. What's going on, everybody? You found Bottom Tier Collector, and I am your host, The Bearded One, bringing you bottom tier content from a Bottom Tier Collector today. Got a special bottom tier story for you, a story I consider my favorite single issue, my favorite arc of all time, the Death Metal Infinite Hour Extreme one-shot, a whole one-shot dedicated to Lobo. Haven't seen a Lobo one-shot since, I don't know, the mid-2000s. Haven't seen an actual, physical single issue, not a square-bound issue, since the 90s even. So it was a real treat when this came out, and I did buy this at the time of release. This is the A cover, which I have signed by the cover artist Kyle Hotz, and then the Rafal Grandpa 1 in 25 variant. Now, his signature is Rafal Grandpa after Bisley, so I don't know what he means by that. Pretty interesting that that's on the boot of Lobo. Nevertheless, great covers. And let's get into the story. So, some pretext. The roots of death metal go all the way back years ago to the metal event Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo wrote. And Lobo's not in metal, unfortunately. I feel like that was an event made for a character like Lobo. But really all we get from Lobo is he gets his butt kicked by Batman the Devastator, who's essentially a Doomsday in a Batman costume. Fast forward to around 2017, the Rebirth, Teen Titans run. Lex Luthor has eventually, actually this takes place in Justice League. Rebirth Justice League. Lex Luthor pretty much consumes the essence of Martian Manhunter, and he's gained new powers, and he's decided he's going to put out contracts into the universe to all the villains in the DC universe and see who's going to answer and join him in stopping the Batman who laughs. Where have we seen that before? It's not a terribly inventive plot, but it's very interesting nonetheless. And we go to Rebirth Teen Titans, where Lobo has accepted the contract, and he's going to take out the Teen Titans, who also, this goes off into another side story. Crush, Lobo's daughter, is a member of the Teen Titans, and they square off and have some very interesting battles, and they have a fun mini-series a couple of years later, Lobo and Crush. And then we come to Death Metal, where Lobo Actually, in this issue, we'll just start off with how the issue starts. In this issue, Lobo, we're seeing Lobo in a bar, and we don't know it at first, but Lobo's trying to order a drink from the bartender, and he can't physically pour Lobo a drink. And then we're taken to a scene of Lobo having destroyed the bar and ripped the arms off of the bartender, and so Lobo has to pour himself a drink. And then, as Lobo's making preparations to leave with the body of the bounty that he killed before he realized he was a bounty that Lobo was after, Frazetta Batman, or the Batman Who Frags, I refer to him as the Batman Who Frags, appears on the scene, and they square off. And we get some funny commentary with Lobo calling him a butthead and calling him a bat fetish freak. It's just great scripting in this scene. And Lobo gets his butt kicked, and right before he's about to, right before he gets sucked into a portal, he reveals that he's dug a batarang into the guts of Batman Who Frags, and before he's able to split Batman Who Frags open, as I said, sucked into a portal, and now we're taken to where Lex Luthor is at in reality, in the universe. And he's explaining to Lobo that all of existence hangs in the balance of the main man, the one who frags. The sociopathic, narcissistic, very greedy, very selfish Lobo. All of existence hangs on the main man. It's very interesting to think about it. And he's telling Lobo the benefits of saving the universe, and his reasoning is none of that, none of that saving innocent lives or keeping reality in existence and the importance of existence. No, it's the end of babes, the end of money, the end of space dolphins. That is why Lobo decides to save the universe. And after making sure that Lex Luthor is going to pay Lobo handsomely, he decides to take the job, and we're taken to Hawkworld. And on his way to a Hawkman temple to receive death metal, he has to fight Solomon Grundy, dressed up as Batman. And they square off a little bit, and then Lobo makes his way to the temple. And Lobo's kind of a dunce, which I like part dunce Lobo. I like how he was scripted here. It felt very 90s Lobo. Hats off to the writer for capturing the essence of Lobo. He says, I can't believe they would just leave the death metal just laying out in the open. And Hawkman appears on the scene and says, you wouldn't think that I actually left it out in the open, would you? And he leads Lobo to the death metal, and about that time, I believe it's Batman Who Frags who finds him in Hawkworld, and right before the temple gets blown to smithereens and Batman Who Frags thinks he's defeated Lobo, the true Lobo, Lobo's sucked through a portal, and they find themselves in Gem World, which I think, having recently read Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think Gem World is the place where Amethyst from Crisis on Infinite Earths, she was a new character, a very powerful, like, crystal princess. I think she was created in Crisis on Infinite Earths to be a new, like, very ultra powerful character. And I don't think her lifespan was that long. I think she got left in Gem World. However, I'm just trying to point out that Gem World, it harkens back to Amethyst and that character. So very funny that Lobo, this ultra-violent, ultra-machismo male, ends up in this, like, fairy princess, like, unicorns and diamonds and crystals, like, world with Hawkman. And before we get too much into Gem World, Lobo activates death metal, and we're presented with a series of very, very funny pages. One being Superman, and if you notice in the picture I'll put up over here. It'll say Superman by Lobo, written by Lobo. And all of the scripting is done in Lobo's voice. So you're getting Superman's history on this page, done in Lobo's vision. So it's very hilarious. And then I'll put the Batman page up here, and I'll leave it up here for a second. Just the way he speaks through Bruce Wayne's tragedy and him losing his parents. It's just very hilarious. It just makes light of the situation. And then my favorite page in all of comics history, my favorite panel in all of comics history, I'll put the picture up right there, is Wonder Woman. Lobo rewriting Wonder Woman's history. And I don't remember it word for word, but it shows Lobo in Wonder Woman's costume. And he says, Lobo's such a big, sexy stud. I can't wait to do sexy snugglikins with him all night, or something like that. And then it shows Themyscira getting destroyed. And I think Steve Rogers, who's very important to Diana, I think he's drowning or something in a panel. Lobo, dressed as Wonder Woman, says, "You wimp, you're too weak to live." And he chops Steve Rogers' head off. And it's just a fantastic page. I cried laughing the first time I ever read that panel and these series of pages. Very, very funny. And I think there's one more page before. Okay, so I brain farted. There's not one more of those funny pages. That was it. The Superman, the Batman, and the Wonder Woman. And then we're taken back out of the pocket reality. I'm not really sure where Lobo is. Somewhere in between space and time. And he's contemplating what to do between him and Starfire. And just before he plays that out, Brainiac arrives to, per instruction of Lex Luthor, to slow down Lobo and make sure he relinquishes the death metal. Because it's freaking Lobo. You don't want Lobo with the ability to create the universe. You get what we just saw. And what we're fixing to get. And Lobo's having some fun and goofing around. He turns Brainiac into Miss Trib. That harkens back to Lobo Volume 1. His 4th grade teacher, Miss Trib. So a funny Easter egg, funny nod. And Lobo's decided he's going to torture Brainiac instead of giving him the death metal. And Brainiac's trying to convince him, please just give it back. You're a survivor. Give it to us. He's speaking in this proper language, and then to finally try to make one last ditch effort as Lobo's building his gun to shoot Brainiac. He says, "You are the strongest bastard in the universe," in your jargon. And just hearing Brainiac try to speak in Lobo's language so that Lobo can understand what Brainiac is trying to convince him to do. It's just hilarious. And Lobo tells him a joke. He says, "Oh, quick wizard, what's the difference between jam and jelly?" Brainiac says, "The sugar content." Because Brainiac's just purely logical. And Lobo says, "Wrong. I can't jelly this gun up your exhaust port." Because, but he can jam his gun up Brainiac's exhaust port. Total dad joke, but if you read the panel, I'll put the picture up here. It's hilarious. The fate of existence is in the balance. Lobo's out here making jokes, fixing to destroy Brainiac. Just for no reason, really. And finally, Lobo comes to his senses and he decides he's going to take the death metal and give it back to Brainiac because he's going to be selfish like Brainiac. He wants all his selfish needs met. And then Batman Who Frags appears and they square off again. And just before we think Batman Who Frags is going to beat the real true main man, Lobo remembers his pocket universe he created, Loboland. He sucks Batman Who Frags into Loboland. And the very last page is Frazetta Batman Who Frags, finding himself being punched to death by all the other Lobo characters in Lobo Land. And that's how the comic book ends. And you can read the rest of how this plays out. Lobo still plays a part in death metal. I think we see Lobo up to death metal number 6, where he plays a big important role with Diana. And if you haven't read death metal, I encourage you to read it. Don't take it seriously. Death metal is just a fun, over-the-top story about Batman Who Laughs, this iteration of Batman who's created, he's the creator of the dark multiverse, and they're going to devour all the other realities with all the other iterations of Batman. And it's just Snyder and Capullo making fun of Batmania. You know, all you people like me who are fatigued with Batman, you know, I think you will appreciate the Batman Overload, because it's meant to be funny. It's meant to be over the top. You know, a lot of the writing in the rest of death metal isn't quite as tongue-in-cheek, isn't quite as over the top as what you'll read in Infinite Hour Extreme one shot. I said it right without even looking, but I did look anyways. But it's still funny, it's still hilarious, and I think it's my favorite event of all time. It's got great aesthetic. I love the art throughout death metal and Infinite Hour. I think the idea that there's a Batman Who Frags, a Lobo Batman in the Dark Multiverse is incredibly hilarious and incredibly cool. And Todd McFarlane, if you ever see this video, I'm begging you, please give me a Batman Who Frags figure. I'm waiting on that figure. Ever since I read that issue, I've just been dying for you to do a Batman Who Frags figure. That would just make this fanboy very, very happy. I love this story because it recaptured classic Lobo. 90s Lobo that I know and love, the Alan Grant Volume 2 run, even prior to that. The very over-the-top, you know, Lobo's Back, or Lobo Cop, Lobo Goes to Hollywood, Paramilitary Christmas Special. That Lobo, that take on Lobo, that very chaotic personality is captured here. I feel like the writer... several writers, Robert Kirkman, I believe, did some of this. He's on the credits. I'm seeing it just now. It's broken up into 3 parts, and it's just an incredible story. A lot, you know, even though it's broken up into 3 parts, I'm gonna get a lot of people having to do with this one shot. It still flows very smoothly. And Lobo's personality never gets lost in the sauce. You know, there's different art changes, which is great. I love the different art changes. None of the art, while it was jarring, I don't mean jarring in a negative sense. It just wasn't the same artist throughout the whole book, I guess is what I mean. But it still was very pleasing to the eye. Every single art changed, because Lobo is just that kind of character where the art doesn't have to be top tier. You can have those rushed art styles like a Sam Keith or a Simone Bisley on Lobo, and it just seems to work. And that was definitely showcased here. But there's also a cleaner, slicker style in some of these pages, and it's fantastic. I don't know what else to say. I feel like I hammered out this story. I hope you guys will read at least the Infinite Hour Extreme one-shot. It's, in my opinion, the greatest story ever told. Before this issue, it was the Soul Brothers 2-issue arc. The very end of Lobo Volume 2 was my favorite story arc, but this takes the cake. I love it. And for a book to come out in 2020, I think it was post-pandemic, or it was either right before the shutdown or right after the shutdown, because it's somewhere in the middle of death metal. is when this one shot gets released. So for a book to come out in 2020 and feel like 1992 is incredible, and it shows the artist's dedication, or not the artist, the writer's dedication to learning about the character, to knowing about the character, and their faithfulness to the spirit of Lobo. That really meant a lot to me, because I don't want to name any books, but I'm not getting a lot of great Lobo content lately from what I get. A lot of it is trash. So great to have this book in existence. That'll do me, guys. David's Comics and Wrestling. No more. That's the greatest story ever told. I just shown you why Lobo's the best. Lobo's the funniest. Why Lobo is king of the sarcastic, adult, themed, violent character niche in comic books. So, no more. Until next time, guys.